Okay, the next item on the agenda is superintendent's recommendations and reports. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Birding. This time, I'd like to ask Mr. Martin to cover the items listed under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Birding, and members of the board. I have several items for you this evening under Personnel Professional. Item number 1, resignations, letters A through C. I do want to mention a couple of these. Item B is Maria Steinbach, who has been a speech and language pathologist for us. She's retiring. She's got over 30 years in education. This is a shout out, Carrie. She's been awesome. She's been a very positive force in our district, and we congratulate her on her retirement. And I'd also like to mention item C under resignations, Shannon Williamson, who has served us a couple years as our district's preschool supervisor. And we appreciate her service. She's done a lot for the program, and we hate to see her go. So those are resignations. Item number 2, unpaid leaves of absence, letter A. Item number 3, this is employment for the 2021 school year and beyond. Item A is, I want to mention him in particular, Matthew Crapo, who is being hired as the Director of Student Services. Matt was a teacher in our school district. He was at the intermediate school for several years, and then he left to become an administrator in a neighboring district, and now he's returning to Fairfield. So we're glad to welcome him back home. He assured us in the interviews that he bleeds red, and he's excited to be back in Fairfield. So letter A is Matt Crapo. Letters B through E are other new hires for the 2021 school year. Letter F, new 1-year limited teaching contracts. Letter G, new 2-year limited teaching contracts. And letter G has 4 pages of entries. There's a lot of teachers getting 2-year contracts this year. Letter H, new continuing teacher contracts. Each year we have a few teachers who get continuing contracts. This year we have 11 outstanding educators that we're welcoming with continuing contracts this year. Letter I is recommending approval of the supplemental contracts for extended service days. This is per the FCTA contract section 6.08. Letter J, recommend approval of the supplemental contracts for co-curricular placements, and this is per the FCTA contract section 6.07. Letter K, recommend approval of 10 extended service days for the listed school psychologist. Item L, recommend that the following persons be issued administrative contracts effective July 1st, 2020. And there's numbers 1 through 13. 13 administrators are being renewed with contracts this year. That concludes the items I have for you this evening under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Are Mrs. O'Neill and Mr. Begley. Any questions or comments?
A lot of great teachers and administrators, so it's a positive future, which is good.
That's great. Mrs. Lamb, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Begley,
Yes.
Mr. Birding,
Yes.
Mrs. Gundrum,
Yes.
and Mrs. Shorter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
This time, I would like to ask Mr. Penny to cover the items listed under Personnel Support.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Birding, members of the board, I have one item for your consideration this evening under personnel support. Under item number 1, resignations, letter A. This concludes the items I have for you your consideration this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
I believe that was Mr. Begley and Mrs. Gundrum. Any questions or comments? Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Begley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gundrum,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Shorter,
Yes.
and Mr. Birding.
Yes. Motion carries.